With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. With me, as always, live tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, my beanie-wearing buddy, Matt. Matt, how you doing over there?
Hey, Mark. I'm doing great. Do you know that you start every podcast out the exact same way?
I do. You know, I'm a creature of habit. I'm old. I'm an old dog. You can't teach me new tricks, Matt. Okay? So don't knock it. It's worked for 109. This is episode, 109?
That's right.
Something like that. Yeah, so it's worked.
To all our listeners, don't expect anything else. We've made it this far on 109 episodes. You're going to get it for 109 more.
I mean, come on, Matt. You know, it's like the reason we're successful is because I stick to the same script. No, I'm just kidding. That's not the reason why we're successful because we have
great guests.
We have great guests.
It has
exactly
nothing
right,
to do
man.
with you and I. Absolutely
That's right.
not.
Yeah, but we do have faces for podcasting, as we were just talking off camera a few minutes ago, right?
Yes.
All right, man. So Matt, with that said, let's thank our sponsors. Of course, we appreciate all of our sponsors who are involved with the show. It's because of them that we're able to bring such great guests to all of our listeners. So we appreciate everything that our sponsors do for us. We definitely appreciate that very much. So Matt, with that said, you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. We actually had the distinction of our furthest from Kentucky guest so far.
Right?
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So he is the founder and head distiller at R6 Distillery in El Segundo, California, Rob Rubens. Rob, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Hey guys, Mark, Matt, thanks for having me tonight.
Yeah, man, we're happy to have you on. I love that background back there. Is that LA or no, that's Chicago, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's Chicago. That's home base for me.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Yeah, I was like, wait, that's not LA. Hold on a second, man. Very, very cool. So, hey, before we jump in and have the conversation, let's talk about what we're going to drink on the show tonight. This first round. You want to tell everybody what we have poured up on this round?
Sure thing. So we've got our main staple here, which is the R6 bourbon. It's our straight bourbon whiskey. It's what I call our gateway bourbon or gateway whiskey. The next one after that is going to be the rye whiskey. And then the last one that we've got on is our single malt whiskey, or what I call our bastardization of Scotch, which is last and not least on those. And we can walk through specific tasting notes as we get into those.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we'll do that. So with this bourbon, so the straight bourbon, obviously straight, so it's at least 2 years. Is that the age on it, or is it older than that, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, as we continue to grow into our whiskey, it's getting older. When we first started releasing this specific bourbon, it was minimum of 2 years, and now we're getting into the 3 and 4 year age mark on that one.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was looking at this bottle because the bottle we have, I'm trying to see. Yeah, it says aged at least 2 years, so we know we're at least to that point. So now, in terms of the proof, this is 86 proof, so it is a little bit of a lower proof. Well, I'm a high proof guy. So once it goes below 90, I call it low proof. But it is an 86 proofer. In terms of the mash bill, Rob, do you share that information, or can you give us an idea what we're looking at?
Yep, on this one we're very straightforward. So 75-21-4 yellow corn, rye, malted barley. So it's a high rye bourbon.
Okay, great. Matt, I know you're happy, right?
I am happy.
Matt's a high rye. He loves his rye whiskey there. So no doubt about that. Matt, what are you picking up in terms of the nose on this one, man?
I really like the nose. I
Yeah.
gotta say, just on first whiff here, there's no burn of ethanol or anything whatsoever. It's got a really sweet nose. There's really nice clovered honey in it. And then I'm picking up a lot of floral aspects, like rose petal. It's got kind of a springtime sort of aroma to it, a little bit of grass, a little bit of like some herb characteristics to it as well. And then there's a little bit of fruit near the end, but just a really nice aroma that's kind of balanced out by a touch of oak, touch of vanilla near the end.
Yeah.
Super
Yeah, that's
nice.
funny you say that, Matt, because one of the things that hit me, and I thought for a second, no, I'm not going to say that because it sounds weird. But when you say grass, but it's a nice, pleasant aroma, like a fresh cut grass almost. I picked that up, but then I also pick up that wood smell too, which for a younger bourbon kind of surprised me that I picked that up on the nose. But that oak comes through, but that sweetness as well. I wasn't picking it out as a honey, but I did get that sweetness that comes off the nose. But I do agree, man. It's not ethanol-y, it's not alcohol-y. It's got a very pleasant nose to it. No doubt about that. Rob, how do we do, man? We do all right on that?
You guys did great. I might hire you actually for articulation on future tasting notes.
There you go. Hey, it's all Matt. Matt's the palate on the show. I'm just the old dog with no new tricks that does the same intro over and over.
Well, according to Matt.
All right, Rob. So now we got that out of the way, and we'll be sipping on this throughout the first segment. But let's talk about you, man. Can you tell our listeners about yourself? It takes as long as you'd like. Just tell us, where you're from. Obviously, we got the Chicago background on the wall there, so that was a hint a little bit there. But tell everybody about who you are and where you're from and how you got into the industry.
Yeah, of course. Small town guy from the suburbs of Chicago, born and raised out there. Went to school out there, and followed the traditional path of going to school out there. And then after a number of years working for a white collar strategy consulting firm based in the South Loop in Chicago, which was my dream job at the time. And it was like, follow something safe, follow something that's going to pay well kind of thing. And then about 6-7 years into that, I was invited to go speak on a paper that was published down in New Orleans. And while we were down there, the group of us that were presenting, I was invited by my sister-in-law, and she said, "Hey, there's this really cool distillery if you want to go on a tour." And I had actually never at the time been on a distillery tour. And I said, "I'm all in. Where is it? And when do you want to meet?" And it ended up being Old New Orleans Rum Distillery. And it was the coolest thing I had seen to date. Everybody's kind of got their like aha moment or fascination light bulb moment. And for me, that was going on that tour and seeing the walls that were still stained from Hurricane Katrina and all the damage that it withstood, and the intricacies of the equipment that they had brought in from Europe that were perfume and cologne manufacturing that they used there to manufacture the rum. That was my moment that triggered me to say, like, I want to get out of what I'm doing now and go learn more about this trade and do something more tangible for other folks. So that was kind of the trigger moment where I jumped off the deep end into what's been a pretty long journey for me to date. That was, I think, 2013 when I was there and started this, and a couple months later in March of 2014.
So you're from Chicago now, but you're in El Segundo, which is it's just part of Los Angeles, I guess, right? Los Angeles County. Yeah. So what was the transition, man? How did you make it from Chicago, the Windy City, coldest place on earth, to the most beautiful place on earth?
Yeah, no, great question. I'd wanted to go to San Diego, and I'm still on my journey to get to San Diego eventually.
Yeah, man. You get across the Coronado, you've arrived right there.
It's something else. But I got lured into South Bay at the time in 2011 and fell in love with, Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo Beach area. And when I started looking for places to call home for the distillery, it was a 9-month process to find what ended up being El Segundo for us. And it was new to them and it was new to us in terms of all the permitting and processing and everything else that had to come with it. But, it was this really arduous search for 9 months, literally driving around on weekends to try and find property that was available. And then not only that, but somebody that would take in a distillery, because everybody thought it was like a hazmat production facility with TNT.
Mm-hmm. So in the early days, you're talking about us. Like, who all was it it wasn't just you. Who did you have with you in the initial phases that was going headlong into this?
Oh yeah, I tend to use the collective, but at that point it was really me. So it was
Oh,
all in by
okay.
myself. And I was encouraged by my father at the time to go seek out other interviews for jobs. So just to entertain that idea, I actually went and interviewed with Deloitte up in San Francisco to kind of allay his concerns about not having a real job and going into this whole thing, investing my 401k and everything else at that point. But no, at that point it was really all me. And then we got a group of friends and family together to help fund the thing to get it off the ground.
Very, very nice. You know, it's funny you're talking about going to a meeting, and in my mind, I envisioned this like Tom Cruise moment from Jerry Maguire. I don't know if you're
Yep.
familiar with that movie where
Oh,
he
yeah.
writes, you know, in the middle of the night, he writes this paper and lambasts his entire industry. So I have this vision of you writing this paper about how management consulting is not the place to be, and how so it didn't work out like that. It was just another paper that you'd written to talk about, right?
Well, I still have the article. It's actually up behind me, along with all the rejection letters that I've gotten along the way saying that we would never make it.
Oh man.
All the more motivation. Walt Disney did the
Mhm.
same thing. So I found it, helpful to keep those motivators. They're positive or negative, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, man. No doubt about it. I agree with that. And isn't it funny how in life you kind of grow up and you get these principles, these ideas that people put in your head. And you know, obviously, when you're younger, it's your parents, but then as you get older, it's your peers, and you just kind of adopt this path or what you think should be your path in life, and you start going down that path because it's what you kind of think you're supposed to do, and then you get to that point where you're like, oh shit, this really isn't what I want to do. And this isn't, you know, for me, it took 50 years and I've started a podcast. I mean, I'm still an attorney, but you know, I still practice law, but you know, for me going to law school, it was just that thing. I thought that's what I was supposed to do, get married, have kids. It's kind of crazy how that works out.
Yeah, it is. I actually went and sat for the LSATs because my brother-in-law is a Navy attorney, and he encouraged me to do it because he wanted us to go for the joint. He was doing his law degree, and he wanted me to do the joint JD MBA program. And I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, well, I'll give it a shot. I'll sit for the LSATs, but I half-assed it all the way through, and it was obvious on the way that the score came back. But I finished grad school because, again, that was kind of the direction I was shoved down. But just the story behind R6 more or less, and the name, the reason behind the brand was taking your vision, taking whatever you've got upstairs in your head and making it a tangible reality. And with what I was doing before, it was, all these deliverables, and not knocking any of the stuff strategy consultants do, attorneys do, but it was taking
Sure.
those deliverables and making it something more tangible for folks. So back in 1926, my great-grandfather and his brothers started the Rubens Rialto Theater, which was an iconic theater in Chicago for its time. First air-conditioned theater. Capone and his guys hung out there. So the R stands for the Rubens Rialto, and the 6 stands for the 6 brothers who started it in 1926.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very cool story, man. And kudos to you for being inspired and taking that step, because it's not easy when you have a dream like that. It's just to say, you know what, I'm out. I'm gonna chase this thing, and I'm gonna move across the country, and I'm gonna make this a reality, man. So good on you for that, for sure.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, Matt, let's jump back to this bourbon here and talk about the tasting notes on it a little bit. What are you picking up in terms of the palate on this one, man?
Right away, I get some nice heat, good cinnamon. It's like it's a sweet heat too. It like comes across almost like a cinnamon gummy bear type heat, where there's sweetness, but man, it's got that real nice punch of heat. Then that lends through to some more of the caramel and a little bit of the honey coming in it. And then I'm picking up like some oranges, like orange marmalade, or like something, a little bit of citrus or like tree fruit coming through on it as well. Just really well balanced. I'm really impressed with this, Rob, from the nose to the palate to the finish. It just drinks really well, drinks really complete.
Yeah, I agree with that, Matt. I was really impressed. Like you said, the cinnamon, to me, it was like a cinnamon red hot. You get that sweetness that you'd have on a red hot, or those little cinnamon candies, not a Brock's, but like I don't want to say a hot tamale, but whatever, like a cinnamon chewable candy, where it's sweet, but you get that cinnamon kick as well. So you definitely get that with that 21% rye in there, which is really nice. But that sweetness does come through, Matt, like you talked about. Again, you'd mentioned it on the nose as a honey, but it does come through as a sweetness as well. The vanilla, the caramel comes through, and for only two. Now, Rob, this is a blend though, correct? So it's a minimum 2. So there is a little bit older stuff in here possibly as well, or is this all 2 years?
I think the stuff that you guys likely have is closer to the 3 and 4 year mark.
Okay, I
Yeah,
gotcha.
we just have continued to stick with the labels that has the more minimal age statement on it.
Right. Yeah. That damn TTB, those attorneys and everybody, they make you.
As we work our way toward having a consistency with distribution and expansion of markets and whatnot too, where we can stabilize that and have exact projections. No such thing as that, but then we can expand the age statement to minimum 3 plus 4, plus,
right.
etc.
Yeah. Then do your bottled in bonds, step it up to So
right, exactly.
So what made you go with 86? I'm not trying to do a spoiler alert, but I think the other expressions are 86 as well. So we're looking at 86 across the board. So what was it? I mean, was there a thought process behind sticking with 86, or was it just that's where everything seems to taste the best?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. 86 has a couple meanings to me and to us, and for better or for worse, much like the Bible, we do a lot of symbology in everything that we do. So our app has 13 botanicals in it and different flavor notes, and this one, 86, is my birth year, but not coincidental to that, has to do with the actual dilution of whiskey from a molecular perspective. And there's a really cool article published back in 2017 called Dilution Whiskey, the Molecular Perspective. And it talks about basically having, they do different studies, not specific to this article, but it's a combination of this article and others, where when you add water or ice to whiskey, as the whiskey and the lipids dissipate and mix with the air, what your palate picks up on it, both through your olfactory in your mouth and your nose. And so we really found, just through very subjective taste testing, which I find that all of this is, that was really the sweet spot for us in terms of not being too high proofed or too underproofed on it.
I gotcha. So would you consider that would you consider this to be kind of an introductory bourbon for a non-bourbon drinker?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, once you get to that 80 proof, 86 proof, and to me, based on what we've tasted tonight, the nose, the palate, the finish, everything on it, I would say that this would be a solid introductory spot for somebody who's not a regular bourbon drinker, but wants to kind of venture into that arena. Matt, what do you think, man?
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely hitting it on the head there, Mark. It's got not just that lower proof point. I know a lot of people can be a little turned off or a little scared when they start to see triple figure numbers in the proof area, but it's got the palate that goes with it. It's nothing like funky or kind of off-putting. It's very, very drinkable, very approachable, but at the same time complex. This is something I would absolutely sit around and enjoy drinking a fair amount of, because it's approachable, but at the same time, there's a lot there. And I'm curious.
Go ahead.
I would be curious to try this at barrel strength. Do you ever have barrel strength releases?
I could potentially make some find your way.
Yeah.
We do some very one-off specialty stuff in barrel strength for this and our blue corn bourbon. We don't have the blue corn with us tonight, but those are two that I think are really worth trying at barrel strength that we do.
Yeah. We had some guys on a couple months ago from here in Lexington. Actually, we're in Lexington, Kentucky. Bluegrass Distillers. And they actually have several different blue corn releases that they've done, and that was fun. It's just it's just different. If you never had a blue corn bourbon, I mean, it's a different experience. So I'm glad to hear that you guys have that available as well. So Rob, you go down to New Orleans, you tour this the old Rum Distillery, you come back and you're like, man, I'm going to do this. So was rum the idea, or was it just like, I'm going to do a distillery and just cover everything?
Whiskey was for sure the idea. It was no brainer for me. my shortfall was, I'm sure you guys have watched many an episode of Shark Tank, but it was everybody wants to do everything off the bat, and that was me. I wanted to do beer, I wanted to do whiskey, I wanted to do vodka, I wanted to do RTDs. So I knew I wanted to do whiskey, but it was at the beginning that was part of our downfall, which I'm happy to share any of those tripping lessons with folks, but it was starting too broad. And then as we've grown, we've narrowed in the focus and brought it in much tighter.
Yeah. Because you guys do have, we can talk some more about that. Obviously, we got 3 different expressions, but you do have quite a few different offerings from what I saw on the website, which is really cool to see, man. So, but that's, I mean, again, I just, to me, as an older guy who's just, did what I think everybody expected him to do in life, it's just really cool to see somebody that made that choice, that decision, man, to jump ship and chase your dream to do that, man. So that's really cool. So what'd your dad think? Is he cool with it now? Is he like, okay, you don't have to go get a white collar job. I'm all right.
He's cool. He was part of the friends and family round. So he's
gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice.
But he was one of the late adopters, to be fair. So
yeah, he was the holdout, right? So yeah. Which that's what dads do, man. So mom's back there cheering you on, supporting you, like secretly, right? Not telling dad, but
right.
Well, Matt, we're kind of at the end of round 1 here already, believe it or not, man. So let's get some final thoughts on this R6 Distillery Kentucky straight bourbon, man. Let's talk about that. What do you think? Final thoughts on it, man?
I like it. I think from the first whiff on the nose to the last little bit of the palate, I think it's really complete. Drinks really well. A great starting point for the evening. I'm excited to see where else we go.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, man. And this is one. I think now that we're in March here in Kentucky, we get those 70-degree days, we get those 30-degree days, but we're starting to get to that point where temperatures are going to start warming up. This is something, when you go out and mow the grass, and if you don't want a beer, it's hard to sit down and drink a 125 proof Elijah Craig barrel proof bourbon. But this is a bourbon that I could drink on a hot summer day, even neat, without a cube or anything, and probably crush quite a bit of it. It's a really, I think it's going to be a very drinkable bourbon. But again, also for people who maybe aren't regular bourbon drinkers, this would be one that they could definitely get into and dip their toes in the pool. And it's a gateway bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would work. Well, guys, I tell you what, let's get a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Rob Rubens, the founder and head distiller, with our R6 Distillery in LA in just a minute. Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsofFrenchlick.com to learn more information and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Located just east of Lake Tahoe and the Sierra Nevada mountains, Frey Ranch Distillery was founded by 5th-generation Nevada farmers. Our grain-to-glass bourbon is made using a 4-grain mash bill, including a non-GMO corn, rye, wheat, and barley, all of which is 100% sustainably grown on the 1,500-acre Frey Ranch. And our commitment to excellence shows with a recent gold medal win at the 2020 Whiskeys of the World and USA Spirits competitions. Find out more at www.freyranch.com. All right, everybody, welcome back for round session period, whatever you want to call it, number 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. With me, as always, you know what? No, I'm going to come up with something different.
No,
we're so happy to be here tonight.
You already did it.
I'm here with my I'm here with my co-host and friend. Damn it, I got to come up with something. Anyway, Matt, how you doing, man?
Yeah, just leave it. I'm here with Matt. Appreciate it.
Nice to bother Matt.
Good. I know. As much as I'm giving it to you for, it's always sticking with the same thing. I'm wearing like the same hat, everything I always wear. Anyway, I'm doing great, Mark. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. Just happy to be here, Matt. It's always, you get those days at work sometimes and you're just like, oh man, what a day. And you're ready to just to kind of relax, and you're like, I'm doing a podcast tonight. And then you start doing the podcast. You're like, this is so awesome. I mean, it's just so much fun for me to be able to do this. Rob, it's funny because you mentioned earlier about the dual MBA JD thing. And that's what I actually did at UK many. Well, it's funny because you said, yeah, I was 86 has meaning to me because that's my birth year. And I was like, shit, that's the year I graduated from high school.
Hey,
So,
we're
yeah.
as young as we feel.
Yeah, there you go. Some days I feel like I'm 80, 85 years old. Oh man. So, Rob, are you still there with us, man?
I'm still here. My camera went off, I think. But
No problem, man.
as long as you got my audio.
Yeah, man, we got you with us. We're all good. I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose you, man. So, well, let's talk about, here we go in round 2. Let's talk about what we're going to be drinking, what we have poured up this round.
Beautiful. Round 2 has got us set up for a straight rye. So we have a rye that we've got. This one is small batch, and I know everybody's got their definition of small batch. For us, this is a 4-barrel blend of different ryes that we've done.
Okay.
And majority of it is very, very, very high rye. So, excuse me, a couple of the barrels that we've got in here are 95% rye, 4% barley. And then a couple of them are, one of them is 51% rye. And then the other one is 75%. So it's a mixture of a few different things. And the reason, again, we did that is very subjective. It goes back to, we beakered and taste tested and dropped these with a few of us that were back there trying to figure out what the best combination is to put into a bottle. And this is what we came up with on it.
I got you. So with the bourbon, let's jump back on that real quick. What the process on that was? Is that just the one mash bill that you mentioned earlier, the 75-21-4? Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. The bourbon is that, but we did the same or similar process with it, where we actually took a number of different casks of bourbon from, at the time, really young to a year old, 2 years old. And then as we continue to age it, we try to keep a similar blend ratio or perspective as we go forward on it. With the rye, this was our actual first straight rye that we released. So it was our experimental batch to release.
Okay, I got you. So this is the first one then?
Yeah, the first straight rye that we did.
Okay, gotcha. Now I think on the bottle, Matt, you've got it out there with you. I think this says aged at least 4 years. Is that right?
That is right.
Yeah, is that right, Rob?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that, because I had that in my notes too, because we jumped from aged at least 2 years, which you said on the bourbon was a blend of 2, probably mostly 3 to 4. And the rye says that it's at least 4 years. So now this is all your own stuff, right? I mean, these are all your own distillate? We
do a bifurcated approach on the distillates that we use. So we have a couple partner distilleries. Okay. And then there are some that we do 100%, no questions asked, all us. So the rye and the bourbon, both we partner with other distilleries on, and then use our own distillate. But it's all the same mash bill, and it's all consistent blends, etc.
Okay, I got you. That's what I would just kind of checking on that one. And again, this is 86 proof, like I said before. Everything we're drinking tonight is going to be that 86 proof level. Matt, you're the rye guy, man. So what are you picking up on this in terms of the nose on it?
Well, before we go there, I'm just thinking here, this has got 3 different mash bills in it. So you've really set yourself up for like quite an experiment with your batching going forward on the ryes, correct? If you have such a different and a wide variety of barrels and mash bills to pull from, you can really like kind of change your batches up as you see fit. Is that true?
Yeah, we have and we did. So the thought process is the bourbon will pretty much always be the same, because the paradigm is that gateway whiskey to get folks into what whiskey is and into R6 and other great craft spirits. With the rye, we've done another one that's a high pink / red corn blend with rye. And that one was insanely popular, and that one's completely gone right now in terms of stuff that's of age to put into a bottle. This was our next blend that was like, hey, this is really good stuff. We want to put this into a bottle. but yeah, everything, given our size, it allows us a lot of flexibility to pivot and create really fun, unique, new things all the time.
Okay. So then what you're saying is your bourbon, you're always going to blend your bourbon to try to get to that same type of profile that what we had tonight. Is that right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, the bourbon grain bill will always be the same, and the bourbon age blend will progressively get older as we grow. But yeah,
Right. I got you. But the rye is just going to be kind of a mix of different barrels, different things, different types. Is that the goal? Is that always going to be the goal, or will you come up to a point where the rye is going to be a fixed type of product that you're going to always have?
I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Really Come on, Rob. I'm asking you all these hard questions.
Jeez, Mark, quit asking like all these 10-year questions down the road. Let's enjoy some rye.
I think the best part of being who we are in the distillery that we are is that it allows us the flexibility to find what the market is receiving well out there for the ryes and for what we do, because you could lay down so many barrels, and my background is finance, accounting, numbers, projections, strategy, all that. And we've seen so many different places go out of business from laying down all the wrong stuff or laying down too much stuff and, just then private labeling all of it. So for us, this is the fun part, is like find something cool and unique, and then it's gone. Kind of like, I'm sure you've heard of the snowflake thing that Stranahan's does.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's really cool. That's a good model to have. I like that. And it's kind of like, a little bit like Pinhook, Sean Joseph's, those guys, what they're doing, a lot of their stuff, when they blend, they blend the barrels that they pick, and they're not blending to a profile all the time. So once you get a bottle and you drink it, once it's gone and they're sold out, it's kind of gone, I guess Barrel Craft Spirits kind of does the same thing on their blends. They put out different batches, and then, once it's gone, once it wins a double gold medal somewhere and it's gone, you can never find it again. So Matt, back to that question, man, what are you picking up on the nose?
The nose, initially I picked up like a real toasty sweetness, like toasted marshmallow, a little bit of campfire on it. Then it's really opening up into more of the herbal side of rye, picking up like some mint, like almost a little like parsley, just like really bright, fresh herbs. And then it's also, I think, some of the influence from the lower rye, maybe that 51% and that 75%, where there's a little corn coming in here, a little more corn coming in. I'm picking up like some, like just a hint of like almond or some sort of like not a peanut, but just a slight nutty aroma to it as well. And then just like fresh floral notes as well. Like really, really nice. It's really pleasant.
Yeah. And I agree, Matt. When I first poured it did have a different aroma than what it has now. And I've started to, as you were talking, it was like the mintiness was coming through to me, but also that, or you said parsley. And it was funny because a couple of weeks ago I was talking about when I was a kid, and we used to find that sour grass, what I call sour grass. I don't know what it really is called, but we could chew on it, and it was just a little bit sour, but it had a very unique aroma to it. You could like rub it between your fingers, and it actually is very almost like parsley. When you said parsley, I was like, that's funny because that reminds me a lot of what that sour grass was. So yes, there is that herbalness coming through, that mintiness as well. But there is that sweetness that comes through. So yeah, really, really like the nose on this, Rob.
Cool. I think you guys nailed it again more articulately than I could do with the verbiage.
Oh man, wait, Matt, tell him what you always tell me.
It's all about just saying it confidently enough. Anybody will believe me.
When I tell people whenever we do a tasting, and I do firmly believe in this. This is not made up for you guys, but the power of suggestion is very, very powerful. And so there's 3 of us in the room, or there's 10 of us in the room, you're going to have 3 opinions or 10 opinions on what's in there. And typically, when somebody opens up with something, another person's going to catch that same sensory perception, but they might not have been able to hit the nail on the head or articulate that specific, that the word that you came up with. And I think that everybody has so many different childhood or adolescent or young adult or growing memories, that it really contributes really in an amazing way to the whiskey description as you go. So
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And that's what it's always fun when you can relate something back to your own childhood. But it was funny because that sourgrass note, which sounds weird to say, but as soon as Matt said parsley, it was like, oh, that's exactly what it is. But to me, it wasn't parsley; it was this sourgrass from when I was a little kid. So, which is kind of weird. So, Rob, let's jump back in. You told us about your great grandfather. He and his brothers. He had 5 brothers, correct?
Yep, there were 6 of them total.
Okay, they started the theater. Ruben Rialto, is that right?
Yeah, it was the Rubens Rialto Theater. They started back in Chicago in the suburbs there. It was called the Royal Theater Company, and the Rialto was or Rialto, depending on how you want to emphasize it, but it was their flagship theater at the time. And Rialto, loosely translated, means a theater for the people, for the common class people. And that was really the idea, was to bring in exactly that, all the common class working men and women to come into one of the first air conditioned theaters, auditoriums at the time, and be able to enjoy, sing, dance, drink, and then come and watch the show and then leave. And then they would bring in the next set of people for it.
Gotcha. Was it kind of like a vaudeville kind of thing, like acts and different?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yep.
Okay. Very, very cool. So entrepreneurial spirit flows in the blood. I mean, great grandpa down to you.
Yeah, that's the story with it. It was his generation, and then my grandfather and my father, who had each their own different entrepreneurial ventures. And with with my grandfather and my dad, they did airline stuff, which is why I'm now getting into finishing up my pilot certifications. But for me, it was it was building a bar in my parents' garage when I was about 20 years old, 19 years old, and they didn't. They thought it was a really cool undertaking, because they're like, oh man, my kid is taking on carpentry. And they asked my sister, my older sister, because I have 2, younger and older, so she would have been, I don't know, 23, 24 at the time. And she comes to me and she says, Mom and Dad think you're building a cabinet in the garage, right? It displaced their vehicles out into the winter driveway when it was -2 degrees out to build a bar in the garage. And they thought I was building cabinetry, and it's cool.
It's like, yeah, Mom, Dad, don't worry about those bottles that I'm going to put on there. That's just all part of the display. It's just for display purposes only, right?
Right. What else you can use a cabinet for?
Oh man. So Rob, you guys, we talked a little bit about you went to the Rum Distillery, but you had it in your head to do whiskey. So can you talk about what all you guys do there? Because you're not just a distillery, right? I mean, you've got a brewery.
We've really evolved and morphed as time goes on. So we started as a brewery distillery, or brew distillery, however you want to call it.
Okay.
We shed the brewery. We still maintain the licensure for it.
Okay.
We were one of the first 3 in the state that did it. It was a very convoluted process. If anybody wants to talk about it, I don't know if I can bring out those skeletons, but it was unique for the TTB and for the ABC, the federal and the state licensing agencies, respectively. But since then, we basically shed the brewery and we partnered with a brewery to rent out the space with us. And now it's gotten to the point where we're taking back over the space, and we're doing a lot of co-packing, private label, contract manufacturing for other folks as we continue to grow our own brand. So now, our work is everything from all the R6 brand entails to any sort of co-packing, canning, bottling stuff that other people are coming in with right now.
Okay. So talking along those lines, I mean, you're distilling your own stuff, but you do rye, obviously bourbon. We got a single malt we're going to do. You talked about the blue corn bourbon. I think you mentioned gin, 13 ingredients. Was that right?
That was the absinthe, but we do have, we've got 3 different gins as well. We have a California gin, a Distiller Select gin, and a Reposado gin, because you can't say aged gin, so you have to say rested gin based on TTB.
Those damn attorneys.
No comment.
So you guys, I mean, you're distilling quite a bit of different stuff, right? I mean,
we do a little bit of everything and anything, and we kind of been through the ringer on learning the hard way on how to make good stuff. But yeah, we've been through everything from vodka to whiskey.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned earlier, you made a reference to working with other people. So are you guys, do you actually do contract distilling there as well for other people?
We do. Yep.
Okay. And you're developing those relationships just like word of mouth or just from across the, I mean, is it like people in California that want you to work with them, or are you opening up opportunities across the country, or how's that work?
Yeah, so we've got folks that have a customer from New York. We've got folks from California. We have other folks from Texas. It's kind of across the board. It really depends on, we're at this happy place where we have the luxury of choosing good fits for partnerships. So it's not just, whoever comes to say like, hey, we want to make a product. It's kind of like, hey, is this something that interests R6 and that sounds appealing and that's really unique and innovative? And usually when those conversations hit, so we do everything from non-alc products, non-alc gin, non-alc whiskey, all the way to RTD, ready to drink canned products for folks. And it's been really fun because we get to take it all the way from that going back to the concept, take your dream, take your vision, and make it reality. It's that whole thing, and then doing that to scale.
Yeah, man. So let's go back. I wanted to ask this question. I forgot to do it. We were talking about you in terms of your education on this. I mean, is this just something that, you went to the distillery and you're like, damn, that's something I want to do, and then you just like started getting books and bought yourself a little distilling kit and started doing this, or was it? What was the process, man? How do you go from I'm a white collar management consultant to, oh, hey, by the way, I'm a whiskey, rum, vodka, gin distiller?
Yeah, Mark, it was all of the above. It was, how can I get my hands as dirty as possible, as fast as possible? And it's the same approach I've taken to flight school with learning how to fly airplanes. It's like, whoever will let me in. I say this in the wrong way. Like, whoever will let me in, I'm willing and ready to work now. And it literally came to the point where I paid people to let me come into their distillery and work for them, as opposed to vice versa. So
Gotcha.
I worked for distillers, distilleries. I picked up books. I was reading online. I was calling people. I was traveling hundreds of miles, thousands of miles to go visit different folks. And whoever would let me pick their brain and come talk to them, knowing that I was hopefully not wasting their time, that they were building out the coalition of distillers and other craft spirits, that it was a good thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, were you pretty well received? Because my experience, or what, when we talk to other people in the industry, it seems like that the industry as a whole is usually, very welcoming, very open, and very willing to assist people. Was that your experience that you found on your journey to do this?
I would say for the most part, yeah. Few and far between were the opposite of that, but I would say for the most part, everybody was very welcoming and open to having the conversations. And if not, they would defer you to the right people where you could go get that information.
Gotcha. So nobody's like, man, get the hell out of here. we don't want you here. You didn't have that experience, I hope.
Not too much.
Very cool. Matt, let's talk about the taste on this one. Let's talk about what you're picking up on palate and finish on this straight rye. What do you get, man?
Let's do it. I picked up, the first thing I really picked up was a strong taste of pumpernickel, believe it or not.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It had, think back to a bag of Chex Mix, the dark brown, or those like rye or pumpernickel wafers in there.
That's the best. And you can buy a whole bag of just those, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, depending on your point of view, the best part of the Chex Mix.
Right. Yeah.
I picked up like a strong flavor of that. And then there's also getting like some tea leaf, maybe like a little echinacea as well. And also like some bay leaf, or like some sort of herbs, mint.
Gotcha.
There's some mint in there as well. But also I can taste that this has been in some barrels for a little bit. The oak comes through. There's a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of influence from the oak, almost, and just a toastiness like coming through as well. Some toasted charred wood comes through in the flavor as well.
It's funny, Matt, because the first taste or so I had of this, I was like, yeah, the finish it kind of falls a little flat. But the more I've had of it, and as I'm drinking through it, like the finish is it's starting to linger more.
Yeah, it's really opening up.
It really is, and it's like that. I don't want to say peppery. There's a little bit of spiciness to it, not necessarily a pepperiness like in some other ryes you get that. But it's a unique combination, man, because I get some spiciness. I'm also picking up some of that mintiness, like you said. There's a little bit of almost like a bourbonish type of finish, and that may be from that 51% rye with the higher corn content that contributes to that. So there's a sweetness to this that's coming through. But all in all, yeah, it's a really, really nice palate and a really nice finish. I mean, because the finish is, it's really opened up as well. And I'm really enjoying this. Rob, did we get it right?
You did. Yeah, sorry, I let you guys go silent at the end there to add mine at the very end. But no, I think that's spot on. Like for me, again, this is not meant to be, like I alluded to at the beginning with the single malt bastardization. It's not meant to be traditional. It fits all the definitions that the TTB has, but it's not meant to be a traditional rye. So kind of avoiding some of those like very traditional pepper notes and going into some more of those cinnamon caramel bourbon notes.
Right.
But yeah, no, yeah. I think you guys got it. And again, with some of the older stuff that's incorporated into this batch, it makes it for a really smooth 86 proofer.
Yeah, very nice, man. That's really cool. Well, for me, I mean, this was a win on the rye. Matt, I'm a fan. What do you think?
Absolutely, no doubt in my mind on that one. Smooth, easy drinking, 86 proofer with a lot of character.
Yeah, again, as an 86 proofer, one for someone that is not a rye drinker, again, this is something that I'd easily say, hey, you know what? Give this one a try, see what you think. A nice introduction, and it's a different kind of rye. Obviously, like you said, it's not just a 95.5. It's not just a 75. It's not just like a 51 Kentucky. It's that blend of all of them. So you kind of get just a unique experience, and you can pick up a lot of those flavors from all of them. I think this would be another good introductory type of whiskey for somebody that wants to dip their toes in the rye pool, man. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think this will be fun to see where you end up going with a bunch of these batches, Rob.
Yeah, I agree.
As you expand to maybe adding in some more barrels and pulling in a few more of the different mash bills. This will be a fun experiment. I'm excited for you for this.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm stoked for you also to get your lips on the other one that has the pink and red corn in it as well.
Yeah, man, that'd be awesome. That sounds great. Well, guys, let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Rob Rubens, founder and head distiller at R6 Distillery, in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky. Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round 3 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I just, Matt, I can't even do it anymore.
Just let it roll, man.
It's round 3. I'm Mark. I'm Mark. This is Matt. Welcome back.
That's not exciting. Are you kidding? Welcome back to the exciting conclusion, round 3. We've made it this far. You all have made it this far.
That's right.
You best stick around. We've got a great guest with us, Rob Rubens, the founder, the head distiller of R6 Distillery in El Segundo, California, coming to us all the way from Pacific Standard Time. Rob, welcome back for round or session 3.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Mark. Hey, everybody else.
Thanks,
Yeah.
man.
Hey,
Appreciate you hanging
Matt's
out with us, Rob.
parents are
Matt's
only
parents,
listeners.
Mark's
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
No, my parents. I told you, Matt, my parents don't drink, so they don't listen. They're Southern Baptist, man. They would never listen to a podcast about bourbon. So they're happy that we're successful and that people listen to us, but they are not two of the listeners. Oh man. Anyway, so all right. See now, Matt, you got in my head, and now I can't even think straight, man, because the intro, man. I gotta come up with something different. But
All right.
I
Well,
digress.
you need
Rob,
me to take it over from here?
yeah, Matt, you go ahead, man. I'm just gonna sit here now. So
All right. I'm going to look for you for tasting notes then.
no.
We're going to do a role reversal. All right, Rob. So you've got us something here. When we were going through our little preamble before we even started recording, you said that you wanted to finish with this one and that this is sort of an interesting one for us. We are the Bourbon Life Podcast, and you've brought us something that is not really in our wheelhouse. So why don't you go ahead and talk to us about what we're going to be drinking this round?
So this is for me, this is the highlight of the show. I love the bourbon. I love the rye, both near and dear and close to me. But this is 100% distilled, fermented. Let me start. Milled, mash, fermented, distilled in-house. This is our R6 Single Malt whiskey. And this one had a little bit of if you know any of like the special mishap history stories like French fries and other things like that, potato chips. This was one of those stories where I actually milled and created a couple different mashes. One was a chocolate malt whiskey and another one was a coffee malt whiskey. And the intention for each of those was to be nonetheless a single malt. And on the day of distillation, I said, screw it, let's put them both together. I'm going to throw them in the still. I don't feel like doing two different runs. And so I literally just pumped both of them into the still, packed it to the gills, and went with it and ran it. And as soon as we did, it came off. It was this really like interesting, peculiar coffee chocolate note to it. And this one did not, like a couple of the other different whiskeys that we do, like the White Dog thing, or maybe most whiskeys, it's not all that great. But with age, this one just got better and better and better. And we have become more impressed with it. And when we released this one out into distribution, it flew. And they asked us, distributors said, when can we get the next batch? We're like, oh shit, 2 years probably, because we'll order more grain and get you more. But this one was literally 2 different batches of all malted barley that we did with some Irish distillers malt, some peated malt, some coffee malt, some chocolate malt, and I believe some. There's one other one in there, but I'll keep that as a spice up mystery. But yeah, we put 2 different ones together on the distillation day and rolled with it, and this turned into a really special whiskey for us.
Very nice, man. So Matt, okay, you're gonna think I'm crazy when I say this, and I see like Chad that does some of our reviews for us has mentioned this before, but on the nose, and it doesn't sound right, but I love the smell of it. It reminds me of like pencil shavings from when I was a little kid, and I'd go to the pencil sharpener and sharpen my pencil. And I mean, you guys probably don't remember that experience.
Oh, I do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I used to sit there and break the lead just so I could get out of my chair and not have to do schoolwork for a while.
I went to a Catholic school with the metal pencil sharpeners on the
yes.
I did as well, Rob.
Okay. So do you remember that smell, that aroma of the pencil shavings when you would do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I actually, and that sounds weird to say that, but I swear that's what it reminded me of on the initial nosing of this. Rob, as you were talking, and you were talking about chocolate and about coffee. I'm not really going to jump ahead, but I took a sip as you were saying that. and that's why I can't wait to get to the palate and the finish on this one to jump more into that. But on the initial nose, I was just like, what does that smell like? And then all of a sudden it was just like, that reminds me of being a kid and pencil sharpening. I mean, the pencil shavings, which sounds weird, but it's such a fun memory for me. Rob, Matt, what do you think, man? Am I crazy? Do you understand what I'm saying?
There's something in it that I'm like having a hard time picking out, but I didn't even have to like bring it up to my nose in order to smell chocolate and toffee.
Yeah.
And the toffee is like really nice, like English, that burnt, but that burntness that you really enjoy out of it. And this was from just like holding the glass out at arm's length. I could smell all of that. And then I bring it up to the nose, and like all those aromas are there, but there's something else, like cedar or some sort of like another kind of wood, or like a natural kind of note to it as well.
And
I'm
see,
having
that's why I said
a
pencil
hard time
shavings.
picking it out.
That's why I said pencil shavings, because it's that ground wood, that wood shaving, or that wood aroma that I would pick up from as a kid. That's what it reminded me of, Matt. So maybe we're kind of on the same page, but to me, we talked about earlier, right? It triggers different memories. It triggers different things in your past. So I associate that to pencil shavings, but it's the wood being shaved, ground up, that I think that what you're referring to, Matt. That's my story. I'm sticking to it, man.
I also pick out like an aroma of oat, like oats in it as well. I think
Gotcha.
maybe that's like
the mystery note.
Yeah, maybe that might be what it is.
That might have been
Anyway.
on the tip of my tongue, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So I mean, Rob, I know you don't like to throw in tasting notes, but what do you think?
Yeah, on this one, aside from the obvious with the coffee and the chocolate, we use this one in what's our best seller in the Speakeasy, which is our tasting room for the distillery, and it's called Coffee and Cigarette. So we do an old fashioned with it, and we do this with our coffee bitters that are made on site. So it's like a high proof coffee macerated spirit that we remove the coffee grounds from. We drop those into this, a little bit of orange peel, a little bit of sugar, this. And then we've even done, like, so far as to freeze coffee and do a coffee ice cube in it, and then really zest the citrus on it to kind of like mute that a little bit. So you're balancing all these different flavors. But that one has been like the knockout killer. Like, we went through so much of this in the Speakeasy because of that. That's where
I can imagine. Yeah, man. I mean, no, I'm a huge coffee fan. I make my own Americanos every morning here at home. But man, I can understand by you saying that, man. No question about it. I mean, that's just, and we'll get to that palate here in a minute. But gosh, yeah, that's something else. But let's talk about the grains that you use, because you guys are promoted as grain to glass. So can you kind of talk about that, what that means, and how you guys source your grains?
Sure. So like on this one, it's a little bit harder to do the some of the malts in California. So as much as we can, we try to get from California, especially like the raw cereal products. If we can do, like, for our blue corn bourbon, we got the blue corn, the rolled oats, rye, malted barley, things like that we can get locally. Same with the yellow corn and the rye. On this one, it's a little bit harder when we start going for specialty grains, but we also weigh in on Admiralty malts up in Alameda and leverage them as well. So as much as we can, we always try to go to local grains, but if we can't get it there, then we'll go to BSG or the next supplier that can help us out on it. But we always try and keep everything as local as possible.
Gotcha. And you mentioned earlier about milling. So do you mill there on site as well?
We do, yeah. I'll save this for probably another podcast, but we had a mill that actually was sold to us, and they're like, yeah, this is the greatest design. It's all American made. It had flags on it everywhere, and we set it up, and it was this big heart-staking process. We were so excited to have this huge, heavy hammer mill on site, and it threw all this powder up into the air, and then it put it in this funnel, and then it put all this water and powder in a funnel, and then all it did was create like mold powder that then got stuck there, and we had to clean out, and it just turned into this big mess. So then we finally found a European mill. We're like, all right, fine, we'll be proud enough to go with European hammer mill, and it had enough velocity to shoot the grain up, because there's way too many different mathematical equations to figure out what's going on when you're building out a distillery, and each different piece of equipment, what it needs for vertical thrust to get up into the mash tun. So I've learned all of that stuff the hard way now, with hammer mills, roller mills, everything else. So yeah, but we do mill on site, and part of that's probably broken after the few glasses of whiskey, but you get my gist.
Yeah, man. So what about your still? What are you guys distilling on? What do you use?
We've got a Kota hybrid still. So we've got a pot, 2 columns, and a condenser. It'll hold
Okay.
what's advertised as 2,000 liters, which is, I don't know, about 450, 500 gallons, but we're happy to shove a little bit more than that into there. But it's very capable. So you can do everything from whiskey to vodka to gin to rum to cordials on the still. It's very, very capable.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're putting it to full use. It sounds like.
We do as much as we can, yeah, and excited to hopefully upgrade the still in the next couple of years once we get down into Long Beach and up and running with the new plant.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds good, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. We can jump into that. So now with your barrels, I mean, it's kind of funny because when you talk about a distillery and you talk about bourbon, people think, oh, Kentucky, or somewhere around here, and you think you got the big rick houses out in the countryside and the rolling hills, and the barrels are aging and they're expanding and contracting with the seasons. When you say LA, you don't really envision these large whiskey rick houses and these barrels that are, you picture this nice, beautiful 70, 80 degree weather. You get the Pacific Ocean, you get, so can you talk about that? I mean, are you warehousing out there in LA, El Segundo?
We are, and we do, yeah. I mean, you get everything from, I'd say, 40 to about 110 in the warehouse. So you get a pretty good fluctuation in the warehouse. Mm-hmm. And we, now that we're expanding into Long Beach, we've got storage and warehousing down there as well. So you get similar, not as dramatic breathing as you've got in Kentucky areas. But again, like everything to be said about different regions, like Scotland has, a lot less of that, which contributes to their flavor and terroir. And for us, I think this creates kind of a unique thing for us with what we do. And we kind of find the sweet spot with smaller barrels and bigger barrels in terms of what we do for the age points on those. And we've played around with different toast and different char levels on our barrels, mainly independent stave company. We do a little bit of barrel mill stuff as well. But we found, it's just as good to go with the big barrels and sit it out for 2 years as it is to pay the same amount and go for the small barrels on it.
Gotcha. So that's what I was going to ask you too about the barrels. So you're mostly independent stave, but what kind of char level are you running on your stuff?
Usually right in the middle, about a 3.
Okay. Gotcha. Very nice. But the weather fluctuations out there, I guess if you see that it got to 30 degrees in LA, it's like the ice age has returned. So, can you talk about the impact of the weather, how that affects your process in terms of aging?
We're very acute to what's going on with the barrels. So regardless of, whether it's 30 or 60 or 70, we're sampling from the barrels all the time to pull and make sure samples are consistent. Okay. So I think that's important no matter where you are, especially because I think LA is perceived as ultra moderate climate. And so when you get those big fluctuations, it's really important to make sure that everything is still in sync.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Matt, let's move to the palate and the finish on this one. Go. So you know what? I'm going to take this one because we reversed.
That's right.
Reversed roles, right?
Knock this one out of the park. This one is teed up for you.
It really is, Matt. It really is, and it's so funny because as I was smelling it, and I was like, "What is that smell?" And it was the pencil shavings, but I think it's more the wood, the shaved wood type of aroma that was really triggering in my in the nose on that. But man, Rob, as you were talking and I took a taste, you're like, "Well, we did this coffee and a chocolate," and it was like, holy shit, because I felt like I was eating like a chocolate covered coffee bean. Honestly, it was like so prominent, this coffee taste, and then this beautiful chocolatey flavor that just lingered and finished out on the palate. And that's really that's really what I get. I mean, I can't really say that there's much else that's coming through to me other than there's coffee. There's coffee and there's chocolate. Matt, what do you think?
I think you're definitely right on those. I also pick up nice toasted malt, though. Like
Okay.
I get a really nice kind of earthy toasted malt flavor as well to it. But the fact that I'm looking at this liquid and it's not like coffee black is kind of like tripping me out a little bit. The fact that it's the
Oh,
color
man.
of whiskey. Like
Yeah.
it just seems like it should be a completely different color.
Do you know how good this would be in my Americanos every morning?
Matt, I think actually you bring up a really good point, because this was a question that I had asked when we were going through the whole malting process, is like, do you guys add chocolate flavor to this? And this was my early naive stages, is it's none of those flavors are added. So we don't add any color to any of our whiskey, and especially the single malt. It's all on how long you roast it, in terms of the or malt the barley. So all that flavor is generated in that process and not in any sort of subsequent flavor additive process. So I think that's important for folks to know, that you can get all this out of just simply malting, like cherry wood and different types of adjuncts, woods that you add into the malts or things like that come out of the process naturally, as opposed to flavors and colors and things like that.
Matt, I'm just going to say, man, this is 2 weeks in a row. Last week we had Brian Nation from O'Shaughnessy, and he led us through the Irish whiskey, which we never have done before. And now I'm on a mission to find as much single grain Irish whiskey as I can find. and now I'm like, I'm not a single malt drinker, but I'm like, damn. I mean, honestly, Rob, this is something. This is pretty spectacular, man. I'm definitely a huge fan of this flavor profile. I mean, I could drink this on a regular basis.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Man, what about you, man?
I definitely agree. It's got great flavor, great aroma, great palate. I'm just not one much for coffee personally, and
oh, that's right.
It's
I get it.
I can drink this. It's excellent. It's delicious, but it's just like coffee to me it's just I'm weird. It's just lost.
Don't you blaspheme in here, Matt? Don't
not,
you blaspheme?
Not that I don't absolutely love the smell of coffee, and I could like live in that aroma. Just I've never been a coffee drinker, so
I got it.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm weird.
That's fair. Rob, here, another question I was going to ask you, because you're out in LA, El Segundo, and I mean, there seems to be kind of a movement out there. I mean, there's quite a few little craft distilleries around you and in LA. Is that true?
Yeah, there's more and more upstarts that are coming around, and I would say more and more brands, even more so, which is probably one of the bigger misconceptions, is that you don't need a distillery to start a brand or start a label that's out there. And there's a lot more brands that are out there. And that's why I think there's so much truth and transparency with the folks that are drinking the whiskey, to let them know, like, hey, we're producing a brand for somebody else, or we're blending our whiskey with this, or we're doing this creative thing, or we're going like balls to the wall with this to be super unique and creative. So to your note, there are so many different brands that are coming out in Los Angeles, Chattanooga, Springfield, Ozarks, everywhere. All of these different brands that are coming out are all worth giving a shot to. And it's just a matter of like making sure that the consumers understand what it is, which is probably one of the hardest things to do, is share your story and share the truth with it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we appreciate you doing that, though, and telling us your story for sure. So let's talk about, we talked about the past, talk about where you are. Let's talk about the future, Rob. You've alluded to Long Beach. Can you kind of talk about what's going on with you guys right now, and what your future looks like for you and for the distillery?
Yeah, absolutely. We're super pumped about it. We're slated to expand to Long Beach, which would give us basically a little over four times the current footprint. So we're going from 6,000 to about 25,000 square feet in Long Beach.
Wow. Nice.
With Long Beach. And we'll be adding a high-speed canning line, pasteurization component, bottling line down there as well, and more storage components. So it just kind of an expansion of the current process as well as the private label components. And then, once that takes ground, we're hoping to really move it further after that. But that's kind of the next step that'll allow us to have more flexibility with all the fun rye stuff we've been talking about today and all the coffee chocolate things and otherwise. But yeah, Long Beach is super exciting to us because not only is it a different plant and expansion of solid business opportunity, but it's a different market for us in terms of what we can welcome in for the retail tasting room component.
Sure. So now, will you stay? You're going to keep the El Segundo open, or will that be shut down eventually, or what's the plan there?
We're going to keep El Segundo.
Okay. All right. So you have both locations. That'll be cool. Anticipation in terms of time for the Long Beach. What are you looking at this year, you think?
Gosh, if we're optimistic, I would hope for January of next year.
Okay. I got you. Yeah, but that's got to be really exciting. So people want to come out and visit. You guys do tours, you have facilities, you've got a tasting room, correct? So what can people do? How can they experience everything that R6 Distillery has to offer?
So right now, because of we're in this weird purgatory state, as I refer to it, in LA County, where we just air quotes opened back up, but things are really at the whim of the way that the county interprets things. So we closed down the tasting room in January just until they get stabilized on procedure. But we'd love to sell bottles to folks and bring them in. Right now, we're just doing private events only. And then hoping to open back up the tasting room in El Segundo this summer once things stabilize again.
All right. That sounds good. So, Rob, going from a guy that was working a white-collar job in Chicago, management consulting, to a guy that decided to move to California, open up his own distillery, having no distillery background, man, what's been the funnest part of this journey for you so far?
Gosh, shooting blue corn all over the walls with a impeller pump. And man, we made a shit show of that place. Honestly, the build out of the distillery, the whole taking the concept and making it real, bringing people in and getting the stories from everybody else who comes in and gets to try it, taste it, feel it, understand what it is, why craft spirits are different, what cuts are, all that good stuff, and appreciate it and educate people. And we didn't make money for the first few years we were doing it, but now that we're getting into it, it's fun to not just educate people but make money. So the whole thing is coming to fruition, and I tell people it's not for the faint of heart for anybody who wants to get into craft distilling or open a distillery or open a brand. Even if you don't have the brick and mortar, just that's a lot of money and a lot of effort, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But all of it's been a fun journey. It really has.
That's awesome, man. That's great. Well, we appreciate you spending time with us. Matt, final thoughts on this single malt. What do you think?
I think this is one of the more unique whiskeys we've had on the show, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. Maybe it doesn't fit the flavor palette that I typically look for or that I enjoy most, but I think again it's absolutely wonderful, and I can definitely see why this has been so popular.
Yep, I would agree with that. Definitely, Matt. I'm not a single malt drinker usually, but this is one I could go for. Yeah, I could enjoy this regularly. Oh man. So Rob, where can people find out more information about your brand, about R6 Distillery?
Yeah, you guys could check out r6distillery.com, or we're on Facebook or Instagram, R6 Distillery. Any updates will be on there in terms of new product launches, releases. One thing that I do want to mention too, especially if we're wrapping up, is we did an R6 beer collaboration series with a few breweries that we're really proud of. I'm not sure where we are on time, but wanted to mention.
No, go ahead. Tell us about it. No, we're good, man.
So we did something with a few breweries where we came up with a custom grain bill that would be good in a whiskey, but we brewed it at a brewery. So a couple of the ones that we worked with, Eagle Rock, Bottle Logic, Lost Abbey, Honolulu Beer Works, and Three Chiefs Brewing Company, we came up with a unique grist bill, and then we brewed it, and then we brought it to R6, we distilled it, and then we made it into a whiskey, aged it, and then we go back and we brew a similar, same, or complementary beer, and then we release them together so folks can actually try the side-by-side sister beer and really know, like, beer and whiskey are pretty much the same thing at a base level, and get to taste what they are when one is distilled and aged versus one is just, conditioned and turned into a beer. So
that's really cool, man. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody doing that before.
Oh, and Microphone out in Chicago, they were another one too. That was really cool one we did with one of their breakfast stouts. But yeah, they're a bunch of different styles we've played around with, and yeah, it's a fun different thing because it's not like, hey, let's take your whiskey and our whiskey and just mix them together and see what we can. And I'm not trying to undercut that, because that's a really cool thing too once you find the right blend. But taking it from start to finish over a multi-year process is really a labor of love, because it's not for money, for sure, at the end of the game.
Yeah. Is that something you guys will continue to do as you move into the future?
I hope so. It's definitely been a fun thing. And I hope, folks continue to imbibe and enjoy and appreciate kind of the educational component of it. So we would definitely love to continue doing it. So we'll see where that goes.
Yep. All right. Very cool. Well, Rob, before we wrap it up, we are at the end of round 3. Anything else you want to add or share with us before we close it out?
I think that's for the most part it. I appreciate you all having me on the show. And the only thing I would share with people is wherever you're at in life is, be happy and take the vision and make it reality, no matter what it is, whether it's a distillery or a plumbing business or a technology business. Take that and, run with it. And there's no lost risk in doing it. So make sure you take that.
Yeah, man, that's solid advice for sure. Matt, before we close it out, man, anything you want to add?
I think that's definitely sage advice coming from someone who's done it. It's the kind of the dream of every young or middle-aged man or woman right there is to see the vision and make it happen. And it's cool to hear from someone that did it, was successful at doing it, and doesn't just have the successes to talk about along the way, but is very open and candid about talking about failure too, and all the learning opportunities. So everybody knows that the road to success isn't paved in gold. So it's great to hear that you're humble to talk about your whole experience over all of this. And Rob, thanks for sharing everything that you all have been doing and for the great evening. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mark. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there with the road to success is a really pothole filled one.
It's like our roads here in Kentucky right now.
You're talking to a couple of Midwesterners, man. Don't try to do the pothole thing in Kentucky.
I got run flat tires on this.
Well, Rob, we really appreciate you joining us tonight, man. We've had a good time. And hey, you open up a world. We've had a single malt, but it's been a long time ago. So yeah, man, appreciate that as well. Really enjoyed everything you sent us, and we appreciate that. Appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. And we appreciate our sponsors, of course. Appreciate everything they do for us. We appreciate our listeners. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to the show. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for shows, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. You can also find us, of course, on Instagram at The Bourbon Life and on Facebook at The Bourbon Life. So please feel free to reach out and drop us a note. Let us know what you're thinking about the show. If you feel so inclined, please leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. We'd really appreciate that. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Whether it's rye, sour mash Tennessee whiskey, or bourbon, Davidson Reserve has something delicious to offer any whiskey lover's palate. Pick up a bottle of one of our award-winning Davidson Reserve whiskeys from your local retailer today. Visit www.davidsonreserve.com for more information. And cheers to drinking local.